Welcome to the Long Island Pine Barrens Society program. I'm Dick Amper.
And I'm Kathleen Nasta.
And we have a great program. You've heard that old expression, a man for all seasons. We have a woman for all seasons on the program this evening.
Very nice.
We're going to talk to her in just a minute.
But first, Pine Barrens Society board member Tom Casey is going to take us to a natural place on Long Island. So let's go.
He's right up
Tom?
here. Yep.
Thanks, Dick and Kathy. One of Long Island's newest state parks offers great views of the river that gives it its name. Nissequogue River State Park occupies a portion of the historic Old Kings Park Psychiatric Center. An easy walk north from the park headquarters on a portion of the Long Island Greenbelt Trail leads to two excellent vantage points above the tidal reaches of the Nissequogue. Bring binoculars, and in season you'll find ospreys, herons, egrets, cormorants, much more. On a clear day, look beyond the mouth of the river all the way to Connecticut. For those who want a closer look at the river, the park provides a canoe and kayak launch and a small supply of boats for rent. The headquarters building features an exhibit on the park's ecology and the history of the hospital. Walk south on the Greenbelt Trail from the headquarters, and you'll find gentler woodlands teeming with jewelweed, blackberry, jack-in-the-pulpit, and even an old chestnut tree that hasn't fully succumbed to chestnut blight. There's also a good view of a quiet cove in the river. Many old buildings from what was once the largest and most advanced psychiatric center in the country remain on this site, their fate yet to be decided. You'll find both the history and the trails here fascinating. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Tom.
Yes, and awesome. We were really delighted to have a very, very special woman with us today. Suzanne Ruggles, and you're quite a woman. You're involved with nature in every way. You work with the Animal Rescue Center, and you have your own very specific landscaping business. Talk to us a little bit first about the Animal Rescue Center and what you do. I mean, obviously you rescue animals, but tell us about that.
Well, it's actually called the Wildlife Rescue Center of the Hamptons, and we don't rescue domestic animals, but we rescue wild animals.
That's why it's the Wildlife Rescue Center.
Yeah, we rescue fox, deer, groundhogs, chipmunks, even snakes. We have turtles. We have all kinds of shorebirds. In fact, I didn't even know how many shorebirds we have on Long Island until I started to work with the Rescue Center. We have hundreds of songbirds at the center. Pretty much anything that's a native wild animal to our area, we rescue, rehabilitate, and release.
What do you do there, and what's the success rate?
Our success rate is 50%, which is above the natural average. By the time we capture an animal, it's very injured or it's gravely ill.
Well, you say capture an animal. I mean, somebody calls you. How do you find out about?
How do you get the animals in the first place?
95% of the animals that we rescue are impacted by humans. They're hit by cars, they're hit by boats, they're run over by lawnmowers, they're tangled in netting that we put up to keep the deer away from our prized plants. They're stuck in window wells. They're tangled in nets. This morning I rescued a squirrel that was trapped in a bird feeder. It closed and caught his leg. We get animals that are poisoned by humans. We get animals that have secondary poisoning. In other words, I rescued an owl once that was having seizures because it ate a mouse that had eaten mouse poison. We get animals that their habitat has been destroyed and they're starving or they're orphaned. And we have 6 licensed wildlife rehabilitators, and we treat them medically. It's a little hospital for wild animals. We make their meals. They all have different meal requirements, and we have a kitchen where we chop and create their meals. They have bandages. We have an emergency room for the animals that have just come in, and then we have a care unit where they're out of critical care, and we're just helping them along, feeding them. And then we have, when they graduate from that, they're outdoors in pre-release pens, where we have, for the shorebirds, we have a big pool where they can swim again and get their strength back. And the birds have aviaries where they can get their flying wings back, and then we release them. We release them back to the place where they came from, whenever that's possible. And in fact, last year we had a pelican who was
took
carried
a wrong
up
turn
by a
someplace,
storm,
right?
And ended up on a fisherman's boat. And he was very malnourished, very skitty, and we nursed him back to health, and we actually flew him back to Florida. Wow. And we gave him back to
nature.
Yeah.
Now, is this an intellectual pursuit for you, academic, spiritual?
I think it's true of her other activities too, as a natural landscaper.
Yeah.
It seems to me you're drawn to nature by a whole bunch of
different ways
you think and ways you feel.
Yeah, actually, I was taught by nature. When I bought my house, I just then my business
Your house is in the
started
Pine Barrens.
My house borders the Pine Barrens,
right.
So it's a very unique environment. However,
I was going to say the Pine
own,
Barrens taught you. That's what I was going
The
for.
Pine Barrens taught me, of course. But because I own a gardening business, I didn't have the time to tend to my garden, what is called traditional tending to the garden. And my garden became, quote unquote, overgrown. And when I finally had time to go out and tend it, which was in August, the grass was about 3 foot high, and there were so many different species of grass and wildflowers living on my property that I was just amazed by the variety of the flowers and the grasses. And I began to walk through what I had earlier designated as my lawn, and I could feel the seeds caressing my leg as I walked through. And because there were so many native wildflowers, there were butterflies and dragonflies, and in the trees there were birds singing everywhere. And I had such an emotional response to this experience that I decided this was the way. I couldn't understand why anybody
would take that away and replace it with suburbia.
Right, exactly. And
Mother Nature was the landscape.
Mother Nature
very good,
was the landscaper. And as I walked a little further, I stepped on something hard, and when I investigated what it was a turtle living in that area. And as time went by, I found several turtles living on my lawn, and realized that my property in the neighborhood was the sanctuary for all the wildlife. And as I have frogs, I have toads, I have possums, I have raccoon, I have deer that come to visit, and they eat. In fact, one night I walked into my bedroom and I looked out my window, and I have an arborvitae right out in front, a native arborvitae, and I saw 4 deer browsing on the arborvitae.
Well, browsing. Some people would say munching.
Eating.
That's okay, though.
They were eating. And for a millionth of a second, my trained landscaper brain went, oh no. And then I went, oh, this is great. They didn't know I was there. They were just a few feet from me. The glass was separating us, and I got to watch them. I was so up close to them, and at that moment I decided that whoever wanted to come and eat the plants in my yard could do so, and they could live there in peace. And at the same time that I was discovering all this enchantment and magic, the town of Southampton was trying to legislate the lawn. I think they were calling it the proper trim lawn. They wanted all shrubs trimmed and
hedges like this.
They wanted the
lawn. They
wanted
that suburban look.
Yes, they did. And so I had to defend what I knew was right. So I started to do research, and I found some shocking facts about lawns and how damaging they are to the environment. And still the information comes to me from every direction.
Tell us about that.
Well, the lawnmower has no emission standards, and so it's a major polluter. 1 hour of lawn mowing emits the equivalent in air pollution as driving 350 miles by car.
I didn't know that.
The 2006 lawnmower contributes 93 times more smog-forming chemicals than the 2006 car.
So global warming is being caused by lawnmowers?
Lawnmowers, even more so than automobiles. I don't drive 350 miles a week, and I don't know how many people do, but most people start up the lawnmower for an hour a week. 600 million gallons of gasoline are used in the United States annually on lawn mowing equipment. Gardeners, the EPA says that gardeners spill more than 17 million gallons of fuel every year while refueling lawn equipment, and that's more than was spilled in the Gulf of Alaska by the Valdez. Yes. We use about 70 million pounds of pesticides on lawns every year. These are pesticides that can cause cancer, birth defects, respiratory ailments, nervous system disruption, hormone imbalance, and
all of these bad things to get a suburban lawn.
To get a lawn. And the lawn is a monoculture. In nature, there are no monocultures. Monoculture is where one thing is allowed to survive at the expense of all others. And that's what a lawn is. When people have a lawn, they want to kill anything that
isn't the lawn.
That isn't just
the actual grass.
Blade of grass.
Right,
and when I see those blades of grass, to me, they're like grave monuments to everything that was killed in order to have that lawn survive there.
So now what happens instead? For example, on your property, you allow everything to grow wild. Now, is there ever a problem though with that?
Anything the neighbors would complain about?
Well, neighbors are always different.
Well, I have a privacy screen.
Neighbors will complain if your lawn isn't green enough.
Yeah, and I do have the town come and mow the front and, you know, along the roadside. But
okay.
But I have a privacy screen in the front, and I have a lot of trees, so nobody can really see into my property. So nobody's bothered by it.
How do you deal with, for example, ticks?
Everyone asks me that question, and I love it. I met with Marty Shea a few months ago.
He's with the planning department and the environmental division at Southampton Town.
Right. And he told me there are no more ticks in tall grass than there are in short grass.
In short grass, really?
And in fact, I attract birds to my property, and birds eat ticks, and birds eat insects. And 67 million birds die annually from pesticide poisons. So we really need to encourage birds for so many reasons, but this is another really great reason. There are birds who will eat thousands of mosquitoes in a single night. And in fact, I rarely get mosquitoes on my property either because I have hundreds of birds visiting all the time.
Well, then you've decided then, as a result of your own experience, to export this, that instead of helping people landscape with something from the nursery or one of these sod farms, that you've got a better way to help them. So what's the Barefoot Gardener doing?
Well, we don't do lawns. I've never done lawns.
Some people don't do windows. She doesn't do lawns.
But we use native plants. And that is actually what will come up from the ground if you stop mowing your lawn. But when a property has been bulldozed or it's interesting, when people buy a property, the first thing they do usually is kill everything on the property.
And start all over.
And then once they build a house and they clear everything, they call it improved. I'm not sure that's an improved parcel. You know what I mean?
That's amazing, yeah. But luckily, weed seeds can live in the soil ungerminated for up to 50 years. So if a property, after it's bulldozed, is left alone, a lot of the natives will return. But barring that, we can buy native plants. Native plant material is a growing industry. In fact, the New York Times called it the avant-garde in landscape architecture. And there's a whole school of landscaping called revegetation. And people who use the revegetation model are people who care about the environment, who are tired of being ruled by the chemical companies and who want to find a better way and are thinking outside the box and don't want to have the same old sterile look that everyone else has. And people who just want to experience the enchantment and the magic of nature in their own yard.
Your customers are different than the person that you might find in Nassau County or Western Suffolk, huh?
Yes, they are. And very often when I go on a first meeting, they may want the traditional look. And I have the pleasure of educating them and talking them out of it. And we just create magic.
Have you ever had a problem talking someone out of your methods? Or
the biggest problem I have is when we talk about deer. A lot of people are very much against deer, but
they never met Bambi.
That's true. And at the Wildlife Rescue Center, we have a lot of fawns. We rescue fawns who are orphaned when their mothers are hurt. So I really love deer. But deer aren't paving the planet to transport food. They're not filling the landfills with foam packaging and plastic. They're not using energy to cook food. They're not cleaning utensils and sending soap into the waterways. They're just
we're
eating.
doing that. Maybe the deer should hate us rather than the other way around. You know?
I didn't say
Maybe
that.
they
do. Yeah. But so we use native plant material. Interesting, native plant material is perfectly adapted to this climate, to these soils, to this air, whether it's a salt air or a mountain air.
Maintenance then is a completely different thing. Nature is maintaining it?
Yeah, they don't require irrigation. Once they're established, they don't require pesticides. They don't need to be trimmed. And they're beautiful. A lot of people are under the misconception that a native plant is not as beautiful as an exotic plant, but they are every bit as beautiful. And a lot of people are using native plants now and don't even realize they're native plants. Phlox, for example, butterfly weed, monarda, which is bee balm. These are beautiful, gorgeous plants, and they have the added benefit of attracting butterflies and hummingbirds and songbirds and even pokeweed, which has the word weed in its name, is one of my favorite plants. It has beautiful flower buds, and then it's followed by these gorgeous berries, and hundreds of birds come to eat them. In fact, when they're in berry, it looks like the plants are having seizures. There's so many birds eating the berries. They're edible when they come out of the ground to so many wild creatures and even to human beings. In the South, it's a delicacy, poke salad, I think it's called. Okay. So
it sounds to me like it's a lot less work, for the human.
Right? But the point is, it's not happening naturally once the land's been disturbed. You have to go back and sort of put it back the way it belongs.
The way it was originally.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I get the question very often about children. What do the children do if you don't have a lawn? Their children need to run. Children have such a good time in my yard. I have wood piles, they turn over the wood piles, they chase butterflies, they are fascinated by inchworms, they love to watch the birds, they love to climb the trees. In fact, the native cherry tree...
They don't dislike deer at all.
Oh, they love them. They're so full of wonder, and they experience wonder in all of its aspects in my yard. They climb the native cherry trees, which is another of my favorite trees, which gets bulldozed and is called a weed tree in the landscaping industry. But it has such amazing architectural interest, and many of the branches, they go up and then they go horizontal and then vertical again, and the kids just run right up them like they're a ladder, and they can, they just hang out in the trees. So
now they're a classic example that beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and the more you learn and the more you understand, the more what you're looking at when you see a natural looking landscape, the wiser that you are, and the more you really appreciate it as nature's beauty.
Yeah, and in fact, nature has physical benefits. It reduces blood pressure. Children who have nature-based education have less conflicts, they have more respect for themselves and others, and their test grades improve across the board. Adults who have surgery, if they're listening to a babbling brook, or even if they're viewing pictures of nature, they recover faster. But then there was an interesting research study done involving biodiversity versus a lawn, for example. Mm-hmm. The more biodiverse the space is, the more health benefits are achieved. So that's just another argument, against the lawn.
You're doing wonderful stuff. For us and for the other, perhaps wiser creatures. We've been talking to Suzanne Ruggles. She's a great lady who helps you with your landscaping and makes it more natural, and she's taking care of the natural world and the wildlife that we seem to be injuring all too often. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you so much.
When we come back, we want to talk a little bit about organic farming, so please stay tuned. The Long Island Pine Barrens. Let's preserve them.
Welcome back to the show. We have with us now Connie Farr, who is an organic farmer.
And we've heard that expression, organic farming. It's a sort of like smart growth. Everybody's heard the expression before. What's it mean in real life, organic farming?
Well, the farming part of the organic part, is it's very important because it means your food is grown and processed, let's say, without any synthetics such as pesticides, herbicides, chemicals of that type.
Is that tough? I mean,
well, you know, let's face it, food has been around for a long time, and farming's been around for a long time.
we didn't have a lot of chemicals.
Exactly. It was World War I that really put the chemicals into our food. It was left over from bombs that they had all this leftover chemicals and they didn't know what to do with, so they decided to start putting it on our food. So shows you that bad farming practices are a byproduct of war.
And we're also back to the other thing about we have to be careful what we call progress, right?
Exactly. Progress.
Now, what about the farming part of organic farming?
Well, it's a little more difficult for a farmer because he has to think more rather than just spraying chemicals. You know, he has to think how he can actually keep his weeds down. But if you pay really good attention to your soil and you treat your soils right, you have a better farm. I mean, it's good for the environment, it's good for people.
It's smart farming.
It is, it is. I mean, so many people today, they wonder why children have obesity and brain tumors and things that children shouldn't have. It's because of what they eat. You are what you eat, I think, is a really true motto to have in today's life, especially we're getting food in from other countries such as China. Well, look what happened with the dog foods thing. But other countries, even though they say they're organic from other countries, we're not really sure what they do.
No, but the whole food distribution thing, the tomato thing, the spinach thing a while back,
right,
etc., you don't know where the food's coming from, you don't know how it was processed and so forth. So at the end of the day, they can't even protect you when they realize there's something wrong because they don't know where it came from or how it was processed.
I think they do know where it comes from, and they are trying to blame it on organic food because big chemical companies are being hurt a lot because of the growth in organic farming.
But there's been no evidence that any of this came from anybody who you know that's doing organic farming.
Is it really all about the chemicals or types of things that you put on the food or in the soil to grow?
At the point it's already grown, I mean, that's your biggest point of being organic. But we have known things that will, like, you know, whenever you see fruit piled around, how you get those fruit flies, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, where did they come from? So do you ever see them in the grocery stores when you're there? So sometimes grocery stores will go in, they will take organic produce and spray their black flag on it to keep the fruit flies down. So there you are. Mm-hmm. So, I mean,
basically undoing what you created in the first place.
What has happened, you're not really sure. I mean, it's so difficult. I think the only way you can really know for sure is if you know your farmer. That's what one of our mottos is: try to buy local, know your farmer, because then you have a better control over your food. Otherwise, who knows what kind of control you have. And of course, this is the problem. I mean, food, they say that if you do a typical Thanksgiving dinner, your food could travel something like 60,000 miles because you get an orange from, South America, you get a turkey maybe from Vermont. By the time you get all the parts mm-hmm. together, your food has come from a lot of different places, and this is really creating a huge footprint.
But here on Long Island, you could do that exact same dinner locally,
right,
with people that you know and who are engaged in organic practices and
exactly.
have a better meal.
Buy local, buy organic.
So how did you first get involved in this?
You know, I don't know. We moved out to Long Island and we wanted to have our own garden, and we found a place with 60 acres that was about the price we thought we'd have to pay for 1 acre. So we bought it, and then what are you going to do with 60 acres? So, well, we should farm, not knowing how difficult it was.
And as soon as you decided to farm, the first place you didn't go was to the pesticide store.
Right, yeah, I knew that. I knew if we're going to do it, we're going to be organic. And it was a lot of, a learning curve is huge, but I'll tell you, it's worth it.
How much organic farming is actually being done on Long Island at
There's
present?
probably about 600 acres, and again, it is growing. The younger people coming in, every day we get calls from NOFA,
NOFA, that's the
Northeast Organic Farming Association. It's on your website is www.nofanny.org. So you see, it keeps you thin, farming. But
and what's that organization do?
These are the people that certify organic farmers.
Aha. Because everybody wants, like everybody wants to call everything smart growth, everybody wants to call something organic farming. Organic farming has a real meaning that people can count on as long as somebody knows how to certify it or make it clear this is, that ain't.
The bad news is that the government, U.S. government, owns one word. It's called organic. So in order to use this word, you have to be certified. Organic, I mean, that's good, but yet you get a lot of people abusing that and saying they're organic when they're not. So.
For NOFA, the organization, they have certain criteria that the farm has to meet.
All across the United States, everyone has to abide by certain rules. Now, NOFA's standards were a lot stronger than the national.
Give us an example. What, for example, do they prescribe?
Well, like the compost, they say you have to turn your compost pile every 2 weeks, and
whoa, that much detail, huh?
Yeah, and that it's actually not that good a practice, we don't think, because it ends up destroying some of the bacteria you need to grow longer in one place. But there's, you know, just some little things like that. Mostly we've fought very hard, all of the organic farmers across the nation, to get certain standards kicked out and certain ones. Like they wanted to say that human sewage sludge could be used in organics, and we defeated that. But, you know, so there's always, wherever you got the government involved, you have things that you know, someone puts in that is not knowledgeable, and you have to try and fight for the right way to do things. So.
Is there an educational component of NOFA? Do they?
Can you go to organic farming school? Or
right. I mean, do they go out and
buy
teach?
a DVD set or something like that?
Well, this is part of NOFA's challenges. Part of it is certification, and part of it is education. And NOFA New York, NOFA is actually a 13-state organization, sorry, 7-state organization. And we do 2 conferences a year where you can go and learn things. Otherwise, you call a local organic farmer, you can be an intern. I took about 3 years ago, I took the class at Cornell for a gardening class, and I was so surprised at how many of the instructors are organic. So I think it's, you know, people see the importance of it,
the benefits of it, the quality of it.
They're starting to, you know, realize that if we're going to save our planet, we have to start with our food. If we're going to save our bodies, we have to start with our food. So.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much for coming and tell us about this.
Thank you.
We've been talking to Connie Farr. She's an organic farmer, and she's involved both here on Long Island, getting more Long Islanders to do organic farming, as well as involvement with the Northeast Organic Farm Association. So thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for what you're doing watching the Pine Barrens Society program. We're going to be back again next time with another exciting program about the environment. So be sure to join us. I'm Dick Amper.
I'm Kathleen Nesta.
Thank you very much for watching.